He has made 7 out of his last 9 tournament top 12s. That is probably impossible to do, but he did the impossible.
Chad walked in one day, looked at me, and he's like, dude, I'm packing my stuff up and I'm leaving.
Like any of us, Chad took his lumps. It's so easy to not know that or realize that. Watch his growing process from not cashing checks to cashing checks to seem like he was in the top 12 every single time he was fishing. He's going to, not only is he going to be a pro, he's going to win tournaments, he's going to win a lot of big tournaments, and there ain't a single question in my mind that that's going to happen.
My name's Chad Smith, and I'm a Bassmaster Opens pro.
The sport of bass fishing is funny. Oftentimes, we as fans don't realize how significant an event is until after it has happened. But I'm here to tell you about a story that continues to happen to this day. The story of Chad Smith. The story of going co to pro.
Gotta love spring in Minnesota. 70 degrees 2 days ago. Wake up this morning, it's below freezing. Hopefully it'll stay consistent one of these times. Bass fishing to me is just something that I've always been able to do. Growing up, started at a pretty young age, and it's just that constant pursuit of success. Back in 2013 was the year that I graduated high school. I got a call from a local guy here named John Figge, and he was looking for a co-angler link for him to compete as a pro in the Opens. Long story short, he asked me if I was interested, and it ended up being that he wanted to leave in like 2 days, and I'm like, I graduate high school at the end of the week. And I actually ended up missing my high school graduation to go compete in my first Bassmaster Open on the James River in 2013. That tournament really didn't go that well for me. I ended up like 140 something place, and it kind of motivated me just to try to get back and learn how to compete. Once I graduated high school, I went to college at Winona State, and with my class load and everything else going on, it ended up being a little too much to be able to go fishing in the college events for me personally, and also balance my schoolwork along with that. So going into my sophomore year of college, I decided that, I basically called my dad in tears, actually.
I will never forget the day Chad told me that he was going to go fish the Opens. I was working my job at a fitness center at Winona, where we both went to college, and he just came in and he seemed a little off that day, and I didn't really know what was up, and he just looked at me and said, dude, I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving.
And so at that moment, I was really fortunate to have parents that, instilled in me and supported me, not necessarily financially, but more so just morally, and supporting me in whatever I wanted to go do and pursue with my life. And my dad told me in that moment that if I don't go for it, I'm gonna regret it for the rest of my life. And ultimately, from that point on, I used co-angling as my school because I wanted to get to that pro level and be able to turn this into a career at some point.
And I kind of just looked at him and said, what do you mean? And he clarified and said, I'm dropping out of college, I'm gonna go fish the Opens next year, and I'm gonna try to be a professional fisherman.
Chad and I's traveling relationship first kind of started with, I was fishing some other tournaments. He wanted to get into more, so he started traveling with me. It was just me and him going around everywhere, been home for months. I was born and raised here in Minnesota, but I knew Chad, knew of Chad. We had talked a little bit before I ever actually moved to Tennessee, but I believe I was living in Tennessee at the time, and I was staying with Seth Fighter and John Figge, two local pros here. as well, and he was actually traveling with them. He traveled with Figgy a good bit. My first impression of Chad was definitely a go-getter. I mean, he was pretty green at the time, but he fished a bunch. You know, he was a fisherman. He was always out there on the water. When I was out on Lake Minnetonka practicing, I'd see him. So I kind of knew Chad was, I knew Chad was pretty die-hard. I knew he wanted to get into it, and my first impression of him was obviously a great kid, super nice, and definitely had that sixth sense or that sickness that we all have to want to chase a bass all around the country.
Let's talk about that Bassmaster record you hold in the streak.
So back in 2016, I got my first top 12 as a co-angler on Lake Champlain. I finished in 4th place, and that was the last event of that year. Then going into the next year, I got 3 top 10s in all of the Northern Opens. I got a top 10 in every single one, and I got a top 10 in one of the Southern Opens. And so that put me at 5 top 10s out of 7 consecutive events.
Yeah, watching him go on the streak of checks was insane. I don't even know how many it was, like 8 out of 10, 7 out of 9. I can't remember.
I'm always giving you a hard time about going to the pro side, but why would you when you're making cuts every time, it seems like, and making a few dollars?
But I was running a couple social media pages for some of the people that sponsored him at the time, so him and I were texting all the time, and it was just showing he was a sponsor's dream because he was always cashing checks.
Perennial check casher. I watched his growing process from not cashing checks to cashing checks to seem like he was in the top 12 every single time he was fishing.
And then going into the following year in 2018, I started the year off with a top 10, and then I won my first event on Lake Norman down in North Carolina. I finished with 8 top 10s out of 11 consecutive Bassmaster Opens. And at that time, as far as I know, I believe it's still a record with Bassmaster for the most top 10 finishes out of consecutive events for a co-angler.
When he won on Norman, I shed a tear that day.
What were your emotions and what were you doing when he won on Norman?
What was my emotions and what was I doing when Chad won the Bassmaster Open on Lake Norman?
You seal the deal this week. How you feeling?
Man, I hope so. I'm honestly kind of trembling. My win was on Lake Norman in 2018 down in North Carolina, and that was actually my first tournament I've ever won, ever.
It was kind of odd, that one. You know, I'd seen Chad go through a lot of different emotions for tournaments, as he did with me. And that particular one, we were practicing. I was in it on the pro side. At Lake Norman, he had a different attitude. He was going to win, and there was no doubt about it. I could see it. He was going to win that tournament, which is very hard. It's one thing to do as a pro. It's another thing to do that as a co-angler. You know, you are subject to where your boater is going to go as a co-angler. But one thing I saw as Chad grew is just zero excuses. You know, you're there for a reason. It's so easy for a co-angler to have a bad tournament, blame that on the pro. He didn't have me around fish, blah, blah, blah. Chad just never had that. There's always fish around. I encouraged him to always realize that there's fish everywhere. And I just watched his confidence level grow, and it came to like a high point at Norman, and there was no doubt he was going to win that tournament.
That was like a life-changing thing for me. It just felt good to finally get a win, because I'd come close a few times, and just, you know, it's hard to get yourself into that top 12 on that final day, and once you do, it's kind of anyone's game.
He's made 7. This is amazing, folks. He has made 7 out of his last 9 tournament top 12s. He has 3 fish. He needs 5 pounds even to take the lead. 5 pounds, 9 ounces. Chad Smith takes the lead.
And I remember, I know the fish for sure that got me that win. I caught like a 4-pound largemouth on the first day, and we were going by this dock, and there's this overhanging tree that my pro actually didn't make a cast at. And I tried to skip a Senko up under there, and I missed, and I like reeled in as fast as I could, retried, and we were going around the dock, and I felt tension. I just set the hook into it, and I had to look under the dock, and actually I could just see this giant mouth thrashing, and Like, I'm like, I won a big one. And like my pro backed up with this trolling motor, we got it, I landed the fish, and I just, like, I knew right then and there that I had a shot at winning that tournament on day one. Just because I knew how essential a big bite like that was on that lake.
Awesome job, man. Have a seat in the co-angler hot seat. Maybe you can finally get that win he's been looking for. I hope so. Your co-angler champion, the Samurai! Chad Smith. After making 7 of 9 top 12, he got that elusive win here today. How amazing is that?
Man, I'm kind of speechless. I've wanted this so bad.
I know how much it meant to him, and that was like his step. He had accomplished everything he needed to do at the co-angler level, and I remember texting him, like, tears in my eyes, just so proud of him.
It definitely gave him that one last little piece of confidence. Not like he needed it, he had the resume to go off and go pro from there, but to see that, for him to get that trophy, I think he proved to himself more that he was a winner because all the rest of us already knew it.
I just felt like it was meant to be. It was pretty special. So the journey all starts fishing as a co-angler, but now I'm fishing from the front of the boat as a pro in the Bassmaster Opens, and regardless of where I am in my career, I'm gonna be happy with the process because the whole time I'm gonna be fishing, trying to get there. And right now the goal is just looking forward. I'm fishing in the Bassmaster Opens again this year, and trying to qualify for the Elite Series through the Opens.
Again, I mean, like any of us, Chad took his lumps. It's so easy to not know that or realize that, but when we travel around the country fishing fisheries we don't know, and we grow to get better, there's no doubt he did, and he grew.
Now I've gotten to see him fish on the pro side a little bit, and there's no doubt in my mind he's going to make it. He's going to make the Elite Series. He'll make whatever professional level he wants to eventually. There's nothing holding him back, and he will get it done. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Chad Smith will be the next big name in this industry.
He's going to, not only is he going to be a pro, he's going to win tournaments. He's going to win a lot of big tournaments, and there ain't a single question in my mind that that's going to happen.
And in the end, really the whole goal is just to go co to pro.